The U.S. national debt has hit $19 trillion as it continues on an exponential path. The UN Paris Agreement, which claims that if implemented would cost $12 trillion, adding to the debt of already massively indebted countries. Meanwhile, technocratic elite again meet behind closed doors to discuss policy, probably to determine how to manipulate this current economic crisis, the solution of which has been outlined here before. A solution to the madness, a solution to the chaos, a solution provided and predetermined by those in control, a new monetary system to rule them all. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's move into this right away as we look at the U.S. national debt hitting $19 trillion. I like to cover the national debt as it expands here on this channel. I've gone through every time it hits a new trillion, it seems less impressive, which is amazing to me that as the number gets bigger, it seems to be almost ridiculous to think about. We look at the GDP, and it has exceeded that quite a while ago. But you look at the debt to GDP ratio, and you need to understand that this is long gone. It's far gone, and that doesn't even include the unfunded liabilities of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and everything else that they like to put off the books in order to make things seem okay. But even using their fake numbers, things are not okay. So let's move into this here. As you look at the UN Paris Agreement to stop dangerous global warming could cost $12 trillion over the next 25 years, according to calculations performed by environmental activists. We don't know if these numbers are official, but we know that it's going to be in the trillions of dollars. The required expenditure averages about $500 billion a year over the period. That's according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance with the assistance of the environmentalist nonprofit. That's almost as much money as the U.S. federal government spent on defense in 2015. That means war. Defense means war. And essentially what they say is, they go on to talk about more of the details. Think about this. They're claiming that there's this issue with global warming, whether you believe it or not, and the solution of which is to spend piles and piles of money they don't have. You want to stop global warming. Okay, let's say that was real for a moment. How do you stop it? Well, you take a whole bunch of money, and I guess you take those bills, you print them up, get the Fed to print them up, and you take the money and you throw it at the global warming. And if you hit it right at the right spot, the global warming will die. Let's move on to this article here. Russia is lining up 7 major state companies. The diamond miner, and it goes on to talk about the potential privatization as the Kremlin debates drastic options to replace dwindling oil reserves. The decision to consider the first such comprehensive push in years comes as the latest slide in crude prices is expected to drive Russia into a second year of recession as it has ripped a gaping hole in its budget. Now, we look at Russia obviously being hurt by the prices of oil. Many would have suggested previously that this would not affect Russia, that Russia would be economically powerful, that they would not really suffer from what's happened here. I do believe, however, that they are suffering. Perhaps they will be able to withstand this for a period of time, but I do believe any country which is exporting oil to some degree will be suffering at this time simply because of the fact that they're not going to make those revenues that they were used to. We look at this. The world's largest asset managers have held secret summit meetings to hammer out proposals for improving public company governance to encourage longer-term investment to reduce the friction with the shareholders. Of course, you got JP Morgan, Warren Buffett, and all of the big guys in the financial industry, and they go behind closed doors. And whatever happens behind these closed doors, well, of course, we don't know. But if it was positive for you and I, wouldn't they discuss it in public? Wouldn't they determine things in the public eye instead of hiding in the shadows? Well, of course, anything that goes on behind the scenes is being kept from us for a very good reason. And then we turn over to the real news. Yahoo will lay off 15% of its workers, a massive number. Now, if you think about it, if you're a stock investor, if you're an analyst, what do they do? Let's get inside their heads for a moment. They look at this and they think, Yahoo is laying off 50% of its workers. So, number one, is it increasing its productivity by doing so, or is it just suffering? If it's increasing its productivity, stocks can go up. If it's just suffering and is bleeding out, this stock will go down. But then they take a little bit of a bigger picture and they say, is it all tech stocks which are suffering? And they may deem that yes or no, depending on the economic situation. And the stocks in that sector will go up or will go down based on this information. But it's not an indicator of the global economy itself. They rarely ever look at that unless it's the trend for that trading day specifically. Sell off everything. This is the way it goes. Everyone sell. All the algorithms point to sell and everything drops. Then the plunge protection team usually comes in at the end of the day to make the losses a little bit more modest. What I'm trying to just tell you to do is keep zooming out, zoom out, and get a bigger picture. Just wanted to talk about what I wrote about in my book, and this is the fact that we have 200,000 jobs during the financial crisis in the financial services industry being lost. Things can happen very quickly, and it's not going to take very much for companies to start laying off large amounts of people. I wrote about it in my book for a reason. I know it's important and will continue to be important until these things are solved, but of course, not going to happen anytime soon. This next article, this biotech startup promises lab-grown pork within 5 years. This is not the only type of meat that they're intending on selling to the public. It was created out of a test tube. How many people want this? I'd really like to know people that will eat lab-grown meat. This is absolutely disgusting. And eventually it will displace, or it looks like it could displace, real meat. Now, some people would think, hey, it's grown in a lab, this is good conditions, it's good for the environment, and I've heard all sorts of excuses. But there is absolutely no way that this can be beneficial in any way whatsoever. This is very frightening. This here is interesting as well. This individual, Coleman Chatham, had to leave school because of his DNA. He had these genetic markers for cystic fibrosis. Turns out he didn't have any issues, but they found in his DNA that he had that, and for this reason, he had to leave the school. So, without getting to the issue of this article itself, what does that tell us about what they're doing? The segregation based on DNA. I'm going to leave that up to you, but something I thought very interesting. British scientists granted permission to genetically modify human embryos. That's it. It's over. They have been doing this for a while, but now they have permission. They have free reign to genetically modify human beings. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. And last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. You can flip through the book. If you go over to Amazon, they have a look inside feature which allows you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.